Well, the engines looked absolutely horrible in qualifying, but as soon as lights went out in Melbourne, the racing was at least a little bit more exciting and the race delivered as much as it possibly could, probably more than we could have expected. Also took the win, while Ferrari somehow managed to be their worst enemies once again. Formula One is back, and we're going to review the Australian Grand Prix. Hello and welcome to the Everything Trackside Podcast with me, Seán, and joined by Coops as always to review the Australian Grand Prix, our first race review of the season. How are we? Did you get up at 4 a.m?
Yes, I got up early yesterday and got up early this morning and was at work and went to run.
Fair play.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm buzzing on Red Bull, optimism and caffeine.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I definitely didn't just wake up from a 45-minute nap on the couch just before we came on, so I could be a little bit more awake for this. Also joining us is James. How are you? You were up for this one as well, I believe?
Of course, it have to be. I was up yesterday morning as well for qualifying. I said to myself, do I just go for the race and wake up later for qualifying and watch the rerun? But my body woke me up at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m. So I was like, well, here we are, time to watch it. So, very good. I'm really happy to be here. F1's back. We get to talk some racing rather than just pre-season testing and all that sort of stuff. So very happy to be here. It's going to be a good one.
It certainly is. It was definitely one worth waking up for, wasn't it, Mairéad? Also joining us this evening. You've been very busy this weekend. You've been watching all of the practices. You yourself and Annika drew the short straw to start the season to keep everybody updated. So I think everybody who's listening deserves a subscribe for Mairéad and Annika's work this weekend. Are you completely sleep deprived?
I am absolutely shattered. Worked every single second of it, but oh my God, I am regretting. I'd work on Friday as well, and I was just... I found it hard. But so we're not too bad. I did get a nap in as well, I have to say. There was no way I could function on a podcast without getting some sort of a nap. But it was so worth it. Huge shout out to the team as well. I have to say there were more people on the team who got up to do race reviews for F2 and F3 as well. So a huge shout out to everyone that got up. I won't name any names because I'll definitely forget somebody because I am sleep deprived. But just a big shout out to the team that were up for the past 3 nights, and we are looking forward to sleep tonight till we do it all again next weekend.
Next weekend won't be quite as bad for the race, at least. The practice sessions will still be at mental times. As regards to the Formula 2, we're not talking about that. We're not going to talk about... We can talk about the sprint race. The sprint race for Formula 2 was great, but we're not going to mention the feature race at all. So
why not?
Let's move on then. Back to the Australian Grand Prix. I only watched like the first 3 laps of it, so I have no reference point for the rest of the race. I can't remember what happened. I fell back asleep. I think I was dreaming. I don't think that actually happened. Moving on then. Let me get from each of you, before we get into the big crux of it, a rating for the race. Coops, how would you rate the Australian Grand Prix out of 5?
In between 3.5 to 4. I think
if it was a race of just the first 35 laps.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. So I'll probably go to round about 3.5. I'd say 3.5. We'll go with a wee bit more kind of not as much hope, optimism or whatever it is, hopium that you give that Salk usually has. We'll stick around about the 3.5, and we'll talk a bit more why.
James, what's your rating out of 5 for the Australian Grand Prix?
I was thinking of a similar, but I'm going to go with 3.75. So like sort of upper. It's not quite a 4, but not like just sort of take that 3.75. Do you know what I mean?
That is, I appreciate that. Mairéad, what's your rating? About a 3.96 or something like that?
You've got to be precise. This is a precise sport.
I'm precisely a 4. I think it's a 4 because of the amount of overtakes this year compared to last year alone just made it worth it for me. Qualifying's a different story, but just the race alone, a 4.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to put it at a 4 as well. In terms of just as us, and we have a comment in the chat as well. If you're joining us live on Twitch, thank you very much. Get involved in the comments. We stream all of our podcast recordings live on Twitch now. Follow us on social media. You'll find out when we're live. I'm going to give it a 4 as well. I thought, just consider all things considered, the Australian Grand Prix has never really been an extremely exciting race. Last year, it had a bit of weather to make it a bit more exciting, and it only sort of happened at the end. But it was 120 overtakes or something like that, up from like 45 last year. in the Australian Grand Prix, and that can't be sniffed at. And we will definitely get into the discussions of why and how and whether it felt artificial or not, some of the drivers' comments as well. Before we get into all that, we are, of course, still sponsored by Slicks Magazine. You can check out Slicks Mag at slicksmag.com and pre-order your edition of issue 3 right now. It is in full production. It'll be coming out very, very, very soon. Issue 1 and issue 2 were totally sold out. Mairéad is modeling issue 2 for us right there. Mine's in the bedroom because I was reading it last night while I couldn't sleep waiting for the race. Issue 3 it will be available very, very, very soon. Slicks Mag is a brilliant publication, 100% independent, over 900 creatives involved in making this. It's a proper hefty, it's a proper book. It's not a magazine. It's not thin and small. It's proper huge. There's some incredible articles, stories, opinion pieces, collaborative projects involved in this. So check it out. Order your copy of issue 3 now. Pre-order it now. Use our code ETS10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Now then, a couple of big moments that we really, really need to speak about in this race before as we get into it. The first and arguably the biggest talking point in terms of how do these engines work was Coops qualifying. Now, you might have seen on my own socials yesterday, I put up a little bit of a
You were
rant
rather
about
complimentary, yes. You didn't. You
No,
kind
it
of were
was-
sitting on
it
the
was-
fence a wee bit. I wasn't quite
I think
sure.
it was the opposite of that.
I was going to say you were very Switzerland, but I was being sarcastic.
Yeah. Yes, I was not particularly fond of how the engines work in qualifying, and I don't think I'm alone on that. Turn 9 in particular was the worst part of it. I was watching Nico Hülkenberg in particular, his onboard in getting into Q2. He lost 50 kilometers an hour and like triple downshifted into turn 9, which in last year you could take almost flat out. That's just disgraceful. What did you think of it? Were you as politely on the fence as I was? Were you a little bit more understanding of it, or are you going to let your true Scot out and have a bit of a rant at this?
Great. I haven't had whiskey yet, so the true Scott's a wee bit calmer.
Of course, you're happy this weekend, aren't you? You're in a great mood this weekend.
Hold on.
Oh, hang on. Oh, this. Yeah, we'll let
dear
him
God,
do this.
here we go.
We'll let him do this. There it is. There's the flower of Scotland.
I was
happy-
waiting for the moment.
You were.
Yeah.
You definitely waited to whip that out.
That is a nice shirt.
It's a lovely jersey.
So it's the training jersey from a couple of years back. I kept it. Anyway, so for anyone who doesn't know, Scotland beat France 50 points to 40. It was one of those defensive games in rugby. Anyway, so really delightfully happy. And also England lost. So there we go.
Yeah, you did us a favour. If you could do us another one next weekend, that'd be great. It is our national holiday next weekend as well. So, you know,
It's only fair.
Yeah, it's the
Finn Russell
problem.
can have one of his normal days next weekend.
Yeah, so
Anyway, this isn't a rugby
yes.
podcast.
It is not. So we need to start a Patreon podcast to discuss other things and also to
Yes,
pay
we
for
do.
the bleep machine when Seán decides to go on a rant. I'm a bit unsure how to really take the new regulations now. So the kind of devil's advocate in me is thinking it's the first race of the new regulations. See, by the time we get to 3 or 4 years, super clipping will just be something you go and pay for at the barbers. It's Australia is just not a race where you were going to be able to harvest energy. I think I saw a thing online that said that when they, because it's to do with braking, to recharge, for anyone who doesn't know, to recharge a battery, it's the braking energy that's used to recharge it. And you don't have a lot of heavy braking in Australia. I think it's the 4th worst. I think Austria and a couple of others are really, really bad for it. I think is it Imola or something like that, one of the
Yeah.
other kind of faster circuits. It's really bad.
China's not great for it either.
Yeah,
which
so
we'll
we've got
have a chat about next week.
China's a wee bit better than Australia, but not one of the better ones. I'd need to see if I can find the graphic to see which one was really good. But yeah, it was weird. You know, 2/3 of the way on that fastest part of the circuit, you could just feel the engine has to then slow itself down to allow the charging because it's almost a 50-50 split between the electrical and the power unit. They were having to come down a few and then they would recharge. The other good thing is it seemed to recharge unbelievably quick to then go back into doing it. And then by the time you get to the next corner, you've got a bit of something to go on. And so, yeah, it was weird to watch, to see it. But I think if you'd asked me before the race, I probably a wee bit more of the kind of Seán's argument, and maybe I should have put something online at the time. Go, what the hell is that? Because now I'm kind of seeing where they're coming from. Because one of the things I said, we'll get into it when we talk about it in the race, was the first thing I said, because my son and I, Morgan, who sometimes comes on and puts comments in, was that the cars can follow. That was a big thing that I noticed. I mean, those cars can fight right next to each other, because if you had to do all this regen and all this recharging and the cars can't follow, you'd have 2 overtakes. So I think with Formula One, and when you move into next year, there's always going to be some sort of compromise. It's never going to work exactly how you want it to work. The ground effect cars, drivers loved it because they had all the grip in the world. Radion and sections of Spa were Eau Rouge were flat out, and they were never flat out. I remember back in the day where you were seeing a driver try to take it flat out and almost killed himself, aka Jacques Villeneuve in the bar at the BAR. Anyone who hasn't seen that crash, go back and do it, because both drivers tried it. My word. I think they're still finding debris for that crash now.
Is there an argument to be made for a qualifying mode? Because we will get into the racing, and we can't really knock the racing was great. I completely agree. I think it was a good race. I think the first 2/3 of it were triple downshifting into one of the best corners in Formula One, because it's one of the most challenging and most difficult corners on the entire calendar. Triple downshifting into that made it look like a lap to the grid, which apparently is more difficult than it looks, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. But I'm trying to think of like some of the other like hyper fat, like Eau Rouge is probably a really, really good example of that. They probably will have to mega downshift into Eau Rouge, because they're not going to be able to go from La Source right the way to the end of the Camel Straight on one charge of battery. They probably will have to like mega shift, like triple shift down into Eau Rouge. And yeah, those cars probably can take it flat out with the aero that they have. And obviously it's not quite as exciting, but it's not like they're triple downshifting because they don't have the speed or ability or downforce to do it. It's purely because the battery won't make it. And I just don't like them. Surely there's something they can do if the battery is a capacity, like put a mega qualifying mode back into the engines like Mercedes used to have, and just let the ICE run at more power, ramp up the ICE, because the ICE is the easy bit, realistically speaking. I'm not trying to knock how complex these engines are, but internal combustion is internal combustion. It's quite well known. It's been around for quite a while now, and these V6s have been around for quite a while now as well. Sure, there's a way to just, change how much power they're allowed to produce for one specific qualifying, even if it's only for Q3. And just let the top 10 go hell for leather. There's something missing here, I think.
Maybe, but the thing is, with a lot of these situations and new regulations, it's in theory it works, but in practice it doesn't quite work. Like, look what we were discussing at the first race, the ground effect races. What were we all talking about? Porpoising. Nobody knew what porpoising was. I thought it was just a fancy thing for a group of dolphins. So, when you start talking about things and people rattling all that, the Mercedes was horrendous. And I mean, they never figured that out, really. So this time round, it's now, right, we've got this situation where we're using batteries, electrical power. We've got these manufacturers in. It's not helping in qualifying. It's a bad look. All the conversations on social media weren't particularly great. Every driver that was interviewed after qualifying hate these cars. Part of me is like, oh, poor you. The other part of me is, you've got a car that sticks to the road. You don't really need to drive it. Now you kind of have to drive it, and you have to watch what you're doing. It's squirrely. The back end's a bit looser. You've got to watch how you're putting it into corners. I mean, we've all watched the videos back in the day in the 90s, even earlier than that, of the cars where the driver had to drive it. There wasn't things helping. Or have you seen the onboards of Senna driving with a gear stick and taking his hand off, driving around Monaco? So, like, these guys are the top 22 drivers in the world, effectively. So, yeah, deal with it. But in terms of the actual charging and downshifting during long straights, that's not a good look. And that will be something that the FIA and Formula One will look at, and they will see it. They're not oblivious completely. So they will see that, and they will have to have a conversation about what they can and can't do to fix it.
They have been open to changing things in the middle of the season before Mairéad. We had, obviously, was it back in 2016 when they tried to do like the timeout qualifying? Do you remember that? where the timer would just tick down and every minute someone would get eliminated. And on paper, that actually sounded like a brilliant idea. And then just it didn't work on paper because you don't race racing cars on paper. And it's the way of Formula One. You don't know how it's going to work until it's actually on track in the heat of competition. There's a lot of examples of that from today. But do you think in the Mohammed Ben Sulayem era of FIA and the Stefano Domenicali Formula One that they'll be as open, or are they just going to stubbornly go, just get on with it, figure something else out, and we just have to deal with that?
I think they kind of have to acknowledge it because it is quite obvious, especially if you're in the grandstand. One of the most exhilarating experiences at a Grand Prix is qualifying. You see that car flying and it, like, the grandstands vibrate. You can feel the vibrations from the car. It is exhilarating. It is, honestly, it's better than watching the race because you actually miss most of the race when you're in the grandstand. Qualifying is the most exciting part. If I was watching that qualifying yesterday, I would have been disappointed, maybe because I've been lucky enough. I have seen last year and the year before, so that was probably some of the fastest qualifying. But I just think it's slowing down. I can't imagine a car downshifting going up through Eau Rouge. Like, that just sounds criminal. It genuinely sounds criminal to me. So I think they can't ignore it because it is something that is a crucial point of a Grand Prix weekend. It's one of the most exciting parts, and I think that they will have to acknowledge it and do something about it. I can't see them just completely ignoring it. There's obviously lots of smaller issues happening. I think this is probably one of the most crucial parts. It could also possibly get a bit dangerous at times as well if there's narrower kind of street, like I'm thinking Monaco and stuff. If they start cutting out going around Monaco, it could start getting a little bit dangerous. So I think they do have to acknowledge it. It is disappointing, I would say, watching it, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Certainly is. There's obviously, again, the caveat to all this, just to play kind of devil's advocate on the fence, because I know what a lot of people will say is it's Australia. Australia is not representative of the rest of the season and never has been in any version of Formula One. To be perfectly fair about that. And for all we know, we'll rock up to China next week and it won't be a problem at all. I doubt it with the lanes of that back straight, but we don't know. Japan might be completely different because they can't take the S's flat out anyway, so there'll be a fair amount of regen happening there. In the Degners, there'll be a fair amount of regens. There's much more braking opportunities there. We don't know how it's going to play out. Saudi, though, I think is an example of like a street track where the regen and the recharge mode is going to make a huge problem for closing speeds and danger and stuff like that. But obviously,
I think
Baku as well. The caveat to that is, if they happen, discussion we're not going to get into today because we have no update on that whatsoever yet as we record Sunday after the race. James, what were your thoughts on qualifying, and are you happy to wait it out for a couple more races to see if it's as drastic somewhere else, or do you think this is something that needs to be looked into now?
Well, I feel like pretty much every. Well, I know the Australia's that back straight is pretty long. For example, we'll see one in China that's even longer. So it depends if this is going to happen every time. Like if there's a straight that long in each circuit, it's going to be a bit of a problem. And I think I agree with what you've all said. I just think for me it was weird watching on the onboards, just seeing the revs drop and as the car slows. I think I saw a stat that Max Verstappen lost, was it 46 kilometers an hour, leading up to turn 9, which is
more dramatic than that,
which just feels wrong. And watching them through I don't necessarily mind the downshifting 3 times through turn 9. It didn't look too bad to me, but I think it's the losing that power and losing that speed coming up to the corner. We want the drivers to be able to take the corners as fast as possible. And if you're losing a dramatic amount of speed because the engine's recovering energy, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good, and it's not what you want, especially in qualifying. I think in the race it can be a bit more masked, and actually we saw some quite interesting overtakes and positions of cars because of that super clipping towards the end of the straights. So that, I think the race is a separate thing. I think if they can do something about the qualifying, that would be good. But I don't see it being massively different anywhere else. There's always going to be a circuit. There's circuits always going to have these longer straights. The battery's probably going to go it didn't do the same thing. So whatever that solution is, I don't know, and I don't feel like the Formula One, the FIA are particularly quick at making these changes anyway. So I don't see them making it before quarter of the way through the season or halfway through the season, like they're doing with the engine regs, which I know they're putting that in so people can sort of change things if they need to. But yeah, it wasn't a good look. We want to see the cars go as fast as possible and the drivers to be able to be on the edge, and it didn't feel that way. But even weird, like it feels like even down into turn 3, you could hear them, lifting, coasting, or the engine derating from 400-500 meters out, which it's just
what it felt like to me is if you if you have it, hop on to any of the F1 games of the past 15 years, any of the Codemaster EA games, hop into the Australian track, because it should be in all of them, do a lap flat out, and then do a cool down lap. The cool down lap where you're not trying, you're downshifting all the time into every corner, and you might put your foot down the back straight. That's what qualifying felt like. It felt like they weren't pushing because they couldn't. The only time they were putting their foot flat to the floor was on the straights, and it felt like during the corners, which is the challenge, which is that's what you want to see in qualifying. That's the bit that makes qualifying so interesting, so exciting. That separates the men from the boys, the good from the bad. It's not just the cars, it's who has the balls big enough to take turn 9 flat out, basically. And if that's being taken away from Formula One, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, and I also didn't like how they couldn't go flat out from the final corner start their qualifying laps. They sort of had to like pootle around, then sort of just gun it about 300 meters before the start line. That
really good
really
point.
Weird as well, because then they're probably losing half a second to a second just from not being able to gun it around the final corner. Which just, if you're having to do that just to make
that
one
back
lap.
straight. Also,
why were they not making batteries big enough so they for all-on cars to do one lap flat out? Like, what was that? Where's that come from all of a sudden?
Formula E can do it.
More batteries, the heavier it is, whatever that is. But like, surely that should have been a consideration. They can go more than 5 kilometers without having to like do this sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm happy. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and give us 3-4 races and see what it feels like. But I think just generally, we know we've spoken about this a fair amount as well, just the philosophy of Formula One. It feels like it's more management, isn't it? It's conservation. It's having to manage things rather than going flat out. And that's sort of shifting away from what we all know and love what Formula One is about. So let's see, give it a benefit of the doubt. Give it off. If it's 3-4 races, it's still bad, then yeah, 100% let's make a change. But let's see what happens.
Comment in the Twitch stream there, wasn't the fastest time 3 or 4 seconds slower on quality compared to last year? Yes, I believe it was. Lando Norris, the pole time last year was like a 1:15 or something like that. And I believe the Russell's time this year was a 1:18 something, so it was about 3.5 seconds slower. And you're right, James, genuinely half a second or to a second of that probably is from the straight. The pit straight in Australia is not very long, but the start-finish line is 3/4 of the way down it. So you're on that straight for what feels like forever. If you want to get an example of that, we have it up on our YouTube, like a hot lap from the driver's point of view of how the track looks. You could see how long after you come out of that final turn, you're waiting for the time to start and stop. And you're right, they were waiting 200, 300, 400 meters down the straight, just pootling down because the battery couldn't even hold up to do the whole pit straight in Australia, which is one of the shorter ones in Formula One. There are much, much, much longer ones. Baku is a great example. So what, they get to Baku and they're just going to like pootle down for 1.5 kilometers and then gun it when they get to the pits? That's going to be atrocious. And that is where a huge amount of you're supposed to cross the finish line, the start line at almost VMAX, almost top speed on any track, wherever the start line is. And if they're not going to be able to do that, it's a huge problem. The amount of time they're leaving on the table. There's a lot to talk about in this, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about it a bit more after China next week, where I can only hope it gets a bit better. But we'll leave it at that for now, and let's see if they make any changes. Mairéad, before we get into the full Sunday of it all, before Sunday, there was a big announcement relating to International Women's Day, which, of course, is today on Sunday, as we record on race day. And Formula One have a new initiative. Would you like to take us through that and what they did in Australia for this one?
There was, actually. Happy International Women's Day to all women out there. It's great that we're still part of the sport anyway, and we're only growing, so it's great. Yes, so the Australian Grand Prix, it was turn 6, I think it was named after Laura Muller and Hannah Schmitz for the Australian Grand Prix. So exciting, such a big deal. They got plaques to show them basically that it was their corner and everything. It was a fantastic moment, I think, for every girl watching, or every woman watching, just to get recognised. Their work is phenomenal. Hannah obviously has a massive role in Max Verstappen's wins over the years, and Laura being a race engineer as well. But overall, I'm delighted to see so many women in the paddock. A lot of teams put up posts for International Women's Day showing all of the women in the factories, at the track, building engines. It's just incredible. You've got like Bernie Collins and Ruth Buscombe doing the strategy all the time. You've got the people doing the Sky Sports commentary, which I see a good bit, which is like Natalie Pinkham, got Rachel Brooks, Naomi Schiff as well, who drove herself. Then you've got the F1 Academy, Susie Wolf, who is just a saint to every woman, because she's just advocating for us so much in this sport. And you've the likes of, say, Abby Eaton was basically the Stig for part 2 in the Grand Tour, and you've got Abby Pulling and so many races as well, which is incredible. But we mustn't forget, behind all of the people that we see on the television that are often interviewed and stuff, there are people behind the scenes as well. So you've got hospitality, you've got HR, you've got admin. And I don't know if you saw the Australian Grand Prix themselves posted today about this woman in Australia. Her name is Linda, and she has been at the track for 30 years. She's been there since 1996. And it's honestly, it's a really, really nice video basically showing that everyone is mad about her. She directs the traffic going to the Australian Grand Prix, and it is just fantastic. And I'm just so happy to see that women are now being represented in the sport. Of course, there's content creators as well who are bringing the light to all of this. You've got Bella James, you've got Izzy Hammond, Pit Stop Nicole, Lydia. There's just so many people now involved that we feel more welcome in the sport, I suppose, if that makes sense. There's still a long way to go. We still don't have a driver yet. I'd like to see Abby Pulling or Jess Hawkins or Jamie Chadwick, of course, is doing phenomenal. But in general, I think it's a great step forward. And yeah, I'm just so happy to see that people are getting recognised, but that we're starting to feel more comfortable. And even coming onto podcasts like this is a scary thing for any woman to do, coming into a sport like this. And there's so many more people joining. And I have to say, we're so welcomed here. It's a fantastic place to be, and we feel so respected, which honestly you don't get in a lot of places sometimes. So thanks to everybody, and happy International Women's Day. It is a fantastic
Happy International Women's Day indeed. Thank you very much for that, Mairéad. Fantastic initiative from Formula One, Laura Mueller and Hannah Schmitz. I shared a link there to the Linda Britton video. I saw it earlier on. I'll stick it in the show notes below if you want to watch that back. It is fantastic. She looks like a total bundle of energy, and fair play to them for shouting her out as well. It's well deserved. So happy International Women's Day. And yes, more women in Formula One, in motorsport, in all aspects of sport in general is absolutely what we want to see. Now then, let's get into Sunday, because a lot to talk about before the race even started. Mairéad, I'm going to actually throw this one straight to you because you were brave enough to wear your McLaren jersey today. What happened to Oscar Piastri?
I'm heartbroken. And I genuinely, I feel so sorry for him and for the fans in particular, especially the Oscar Piastri grandstand had all of their banners and they had their flags and everything. It is absolutely heartbreaking. What happened? He has come out himself and said it was basically driver error, and fair play to him, because that's not an easy thing to admit to at your own home Grand Prix. It does look like it was complete driver error, sadly, and it is just heartbreaking, honestly.
They said a spike of torque, and I think Oscar said that the deployment was a little bit higher than he was expecting, but it was the laps of the grid. It was turn 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not a particularly fast turn anyway, but if you're on that curb, which he was, and you hit the pedal a little bit too hard, you're going into that wall. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of an embarrassing moment, isn't it?
It is, to be honest with you. Especially at the home Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That Australian curse is definitely for real. Nobody expected that. Absolutely nobody at all. And I think what is kind of important to say here is that he's obviously well experienced. Now, I know it's a new car, it's new regulations and everything, but you've got Arvid Lindblad, who hasn't really put much of a foot wrong, and he's doing this going to the grid. It's just heartbreaking for himself, to be honest. It is heartbreaking as a McLaren fan. I really wish it didn't happen, but that's what happened. We don't have much to say about a race, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I heard someone, I think it was Matt and Tommy, were saying, at least he wouldn't have been fighting for a win. I doubt that would be much comfort to him at all. I think we'll get into Lando a little bit later. He actually had a very good race later in the race. The race came to him quite well. There was a big gulf between the top 4 and Lando, but by all rights, he shouldn't have finished where he did. So I think Oscar had all the points on the table for himself today, and he probably would have beaten Lando actually today and got his season off to a better start. But such is life. Now, we saw how Isaac Hadjar recovered last year after, spinning on his way to the grid. Oscar outdid him, unfortunately. And Isaac came back and had the rookie season of all rookie seasons. So I don't think this is going to knock Oscar Piastri. I'm sure he has not slept particularly well tonight, but I wouldn't put it past him coming out and just barnstorming through China as if nothing had ever happened. He's very much that kind of character. You have to be to a Formula One driver, and he's very much made of ice in a very good way. I think it's going to really help him. But congratulations to Oscar. It's an unfortunate incident, but as you said, Mairéad, at the very start, top credit to him for holding his hands up, because it's very, very rare. There's the age-old thing of racing drivers' excuses, because they just love to make excuses. Cough, Alex Dunn, cough, cough. But fair play to Oscar for holding his hands up on that one. Now then, Coops, the race start sounded atrocious with the, cars all sounding like they had a billion bees in their bonnets. But Ferrari... Sock, when you're listening, I know you're listening back. Ferrari did get the start that they were expecting. Charles Leclerc had the benefit of the fact that there was a big gap that should have been filmed with an orange car in his way. But fantastic start, and he jumped George off the start, and that was what we wanted from Formula One this year, wasn't it? It was a really, really exciting start.
It was a good start. There was some relatively decent starts. There was okay starts. There was at least one car that almost got it in the rear tailpipe, which I didn't notice until they did the replay.
Yeah.
Shout out to Franco Colapinto for his reactions there.
Yeah,
didn't know you had such game. Well done.
I
Unbelievable.
It was it one of the racing bulls? Because it was white.
Lawson.
It was Lawson. And then you had both Ferraris. If Hamilton hadn't got boxed down coming around the outside of turn one, he probably would have been up there in second place, and then we would have had a slightly different Grand Prix. But it was good, and this whole kind of nightmare fuel that they were trying to say that you're going to have to spin it and it's going to be sitting for ages. The start itself, in terms of, they've got the new sign up that says pre-start, everyone gets a rev, the lights go on, then the lights go out. So they've kind of condensed how long the lights are staying on for to put this pre-start in. I just noticed a tweet, which I'll need to do a wee bit more Googling. Apparently, a few of the drivers made a miscalculation about their power. That's why they ended up having some issues at the start. Now, people can jump on that and say this is ridiculous, but this is new regulations with a new system and new way of doing things. It's not going to be perfect. It's probably going to have issues right the way through. You're probably talking somewhere around the summer break. They do.
If you go back and look at 2014, all of the big change in 2014 was the torque, just the sheer amount of unbelievable turning power that went through the wheels compared to the V8s. And they all had the exact same problem. They struggled and they were spinning like crazy. They struggled in the same way. So yeah, they'll probably all have got on top of it by China.
Yeah. No, China, and saying that, actually, speaking of China, just quickly, China on full throttle is about 55%. So then it's not one of the worst races. You're kind of in the middle to top third in terms of recharge and stuff. Your Spa, Monza, Silverstone, Melbourne are probably one of the worst. They're the kind of worst tracks for this kind of recharge with the battery. Anyway, it's just well you said China. So yeah, it was a good start. I was surprised at the lack of bits of wing, not bouncing across the track. I think there was only one wing that was later on, and probably get into that a wee bit later, from one of the Cadillacs. It was Perez. And I think the Alpine had a wee bit. I think Ocon with Gasly, they two were having a bit of a set 2 and 4. There was a wee bit of damage, but nothing for them had to replace it. But yeah, I think once that started in the first lap, I think I was kind of like, right, okay, we've kind of got something. I think they've got the right ingredients. They're just not put in the right order in terms of these new regulations. If they can figure out qualifying to make it a wee bit less pedestrian at certain tracks, then I think we're going to be all right for the next few years. And we've kind of got to make our bed with it, because they're here. This is what it is now. And if we have to compromise a bit in qualifying. I'm quite happy to compromise ever so slightly in qualifying, not much more, to get something close to what we got, even if every race is like the first 30 laps in Australia, then we're fine. I think there'll be enough variable, there's enough strategy changes in there for things to work, because people are going to deploy different. If you're defending or attacking, you're going to have to deploy different. You've got your overtake, which can cause issues with that. You've got other things to do with, if you lock up, which we saw with one of the, which driver locked up early on in the race? I can't remember now.
Russell.
George Russell, wasn't it?
George, yeah, so he had the lock-up. He ended up getting it sorted, but he had some issues. There's Piastri made a bit of a boo-boo at the start. This is an added variable, and we need variables in any kind of sport, any kind of racing, any kind of motorsport, especially. So, yeah, I can't say that I have an issue with it. And the start kept me on the first God knows how many laps kept me watching to see what was going on and where things were going and who's passing who and whatnot. So.
Well, that was the highlight, James, really, wasn't it? That was the start. And obviously the big talking point was the fight for the lead, which we don't get to say very often. I predicted that this was going to be a close championship between George and Charles. They have taken that by the scruff of the neck at the start of this race. We get on to how Ferrari took it off them by the scruff of the neck later. But it was fascinating. To Coops' point, it felt like in the first kind of 10 laps, like 6 or 7 overtakes lead in like the first 6 or 7 laps. They were each trying to get the handle on where to deploy, how to deploy, where to save, and we saw the kind of the breezing back past almost as 4 laps into a new season, new regulations. They didn't quite know what they were doing, but once it settled down, not just the battle for the lead, which talk about that obviously, but like throughout all the track, they seemed to. It wasn't just a push to pass. There was driving skill and the finished product needed to make these overtakes. It wasn't just push the button and you're guaranteed to pass. It was proper racing once they got the handle of it. What did you make of the race, I suppose, from an overtaking point of view, but that battle for the lead as well?
Yeah, well, the battle for the lead is exactly the sort of the antidote probably everyone needed to fill the back chat of the regulations. I thought the start was exactly what we were hoping for and expecting. That, and I mean, even Alonso went from 16th to 10th. Like, there was lots of variability all the way down the grid. I'm looking forward to. Is Barcelona's on the calendar this year? Is it? Yeah, so I'm looking forward to those. I know I'm getting a bit off track here, but those sort of races where there's a very long start to the first corner, that could be really interesting. See how much variability happens there. But I think the racing was great between Russell and Leclerc. And like you say, like it's that variability. I think DRS was certain that you press it and it's in that certain section and it goes and there's not much to do. I think the battery management and the overtake button is what the drivers can use to obviously do the overtaking, but then it's that variability. It's them putting themselves in the right position, using it at the right time, using it to defend. I think we did see obviously people, I think Russell breezed past Leclerc. Was it back after turn 9, turn 10 chicane? He was able to get the first time. He was able to get back, back past him pretty easily. But I thought actually it didn't. There was some not artificial, but quite easy ones. But actually, I think like you say, generally it was more putting drivers in position, especially in that turn 9, 10 chicane where the clipping happens, you get alongside, but actually you have to then overtake around the outside or inside, and it worked. And I really liked I think it was the Lindblad-Behrman scuffle, relatively late on when I believe Behrman went right down the inside at turn 1. Obviously, we passed him, or Lindblad, again, forgive me, it's a couple of hours sleep here.
2 white cars.
Yeah, and but then they got ahead, but actually, I think then Lindblad lose. Well, again, I'm not going to even mention it. Try and go around the outside, back again into turn 3, but actually then Behrman got on the brakes and able to maintain that position. So I think we're going to see that. And like you say, as the drivers learn how best to use it, it didn't feel artificial in that way. And actually, if it's back and forth, and actually I thought this could probably create some opportunities to have overtaking in corners that we might not expect them to happen. I think over the last couple of years, especially the ground effect era, there was sort of like 2 or 1 places you'd be able to overtake, unless you go to somewhere like Silverstone where there is quite a lot of variability. But it feels like there was 1 place to overtake, and that's where the DRS zone was. And I think we're going to see more and more drivers trying different things in different spots as they just try to catch people off guard. So I thought the overtaking was really good. I'm sure there will be times when we'll see people just breezing past each other. I think we saw Antonelli a little bit into turn 1, just been able to get up the inside, but we saw that with DRS anyway. And I think the variability of the button, the battery management is going to be what's going to be really interesting. And I thought it was great. I think we've seen this in seasons where the first 30 laps, 40 laps are action packed for the first half, and then once the strategy sort of plays out, that's where you sort of see the gaps. And so I didn't think there was anything too different there, but I think that's the battery management and the button is going to be really interesting to see. And I thought there was some great racing and some opportunistic late on the brakes, but then people using the brakes to maybe because there's some lift and coast more, the braking zones are now a bit longer. There could be a bit more variability in what people do there. One person might not do as much lift and coast to stay ahead or overtake, and then you might have to then fend it off for the rest of the lap. So I thought it was encouraging. And we'll see what happens. I think China could be another interesting one. There's lots of potential overtaking spots you might not necessarily think of in the previous iteration of Formula One. For example, maybe into the final corner. You get off the the hairpin in China and get some boost, and can you nick in front? That sort of stuff. So I think it was really encouraging. I thought, and we'll just have to see this develop.
I think that's the point of it, is exactly that DRS brought it into one section per. I mean, in Australia there's 4 DRS. There was 4 DRS zones, which was
crazy,
ridiculous, and it still didn't fucking help. But in places like China, it was like they were every year. It felt like they changed where the DRS activation zone was to try and make it more or less artificially involved.
And they seem to get it wrong quite a lot.
You're right,
as well.
all the time. But you're right, and like Japan as well, only have 1 DRS zone, which is ridiculous. Japan, I think, is going to be really fascinating because you're going to have people on the overtake into 130R again, I think, which is going to be exciting, which is what we want to see. But you're right, it's that variability of, yes, you've got the overtake mode, which is the mode that basically lets you keep at full power without having to super clip for longer towards the end of the straight. So you can keep your top speed down the end of the straight. But for the rest of the lap, the battery works effectively like KERS used to. It's either on or it's not on. If it's on, you get loads of extra power, but then once it's gone, you have to recharge it. Difference with KERS was you have to wait till the lap ended to get it back again. This time around, you can recharge it. You could use it all into one corner and recharge it by the next. I think that's fascinating. One thing I did like, it took them way too long to get it up, but as soon as they actually got the battery charge graphic on, that made the race way more interesting, in my opinion, because you knew what was fucking happening.
Yeah.
It didn't look like all of a sudden just one car was slowing down for no reason whatsoever. And even the commentators jumped on it straight away. As soon as that graphic came up, they seemed delighted to be able to actually explain things a bit better. Simple thing. And it made that much more interesting. It was, I don't care if they're within a second of each other, because it's not the DRS zone. They're coming into whatever it is, turn 13. And it's like, oh, and George has way more battery power than Charles. He's going to be able to make an overtake here. It's like, cool, great. We don't have to wait until that one straight at the back of the race every time. I think that's brilliant. So I really, really like that element of it. So this is what I'm saying, like for qualifying, when they're not in that fight mode, super clipping and qualifying, I think that there needs to be a way to sort that out. It probably won't be this year, even if it's for next year. If we're going to have these rules for a couple of years, they need to figure that part out. But in the race, I think the engines did what they needed to do. And yes, some people had some issues with it, but as far as we're concerned, we as fans, we got racing. People lift and coast in Formula One every year and have done forever. So that wasn't too much of an issue, and it's always to save fuel. This time around, there wasn't any talk of fuel management. There wasn't too much talk about tire management. It felt like all the drivers were absolutely munching through their tires, which is a good thing. It didn't feel like a tire battle anymore of, we're going to, obviously Ferrari, Mercedes, we'll talk about them in a sec. But it didn't feel like, if I undercut them now, I'm going to be 2 seconds ahead, blah, blah, blah. And that's the only, like, we're getting overtakes in the pits, and that's fucking boring. All the overtaking was done on track for the most part. They were all done by moves in, like you said, random corners. It wasn't just at the end of artificial DRS straights. So I think that was really, really interesting. Again, Australia, not representative of the rest of the season. It might be completely different in China, in Japan, in Saudi, in Bahrain, in Monaco, if we even get overtakes in Monaco, but we don't know. But from an Australia point of view, I thought it was really, really exciting. I thought it worked. But later in the game, Mairéad, when it did kind of all settle down a little bit and just gaps opened up as pits and virtual safety cars and stuff like that, settled the race down again. This is pretty normal, and unless you get a late stage safety car, this field is quite spread and it's quite rare. But we were, I think, robbed of a 58-lap battle for the lead because of Sock, when you're listening, cover your ears, Ferrari's clown show of a pit wall.
Yeah. So
why did they not pit one of them?
I would like to know that myself, to be completely honest with you. I would like to know that myself. You always pit one, at least. Why are you keeping the two of them on the one strategy? There was no reason for it. They did rob us of an end of a race that could have been really exciting, to be honest with you. But yeah, well, look, at least it would have been...
You're seeing Sock's comment come in.
I am seeing Sock's comment.
Sock is watching us on Twitch. Fair play to you. He said it wouldn't have been a battle. Charles would clearly have won. I'm not convinced, but it's certainly... Yeah, everyone's shaking their heads at that.
That's the hopium again, isn't it?
Put the hopium down. Yeah. Put the hopium down. But I think we were robbed a little bit of a longer fight. Ferrari just hanging it out for another safety car. There was a mistake. And Lewis said it on the radio. In that scenario, you pit one of them, surely.
Let's go for it. What's there to lose? Like, I don't get it. A virtual safety car. Yes, I mean, they probably expected more safety cars with the new regulations, to be fair, because we all expected a couple of safety cars, a bit of breakdowns. Actually, I don't think there was any accident, really, was there?
No, because Colapinto had his coffee before he for that race.
There
and
was none
avoided a big
actually,
one.
which
There's no major
considering-
crashes, thankfully. Yeah.
Yeah, considering it's new regulations and everything, we expected a lot more. So maybe they were expecting more, but you still pit somebody. I'm sorry, you still do something, especially if the rest of the field are coming in. Like, oh, I don't know. They have to fix it. They have a great car. They were brilliant off the start. Charles Leclerc was absolutely fantastic off the start, but they can't keep that up all season. It is too tight of a battle. It looks like it's going to be a tight battle between Mercedes and Ferrari, in my opinion, being completely honest. But they can't risk those moves going into this year because every point could count in this year. It is exciting. But yeah, no.
Yes.
No,
Sorry,
Ferrari.
Sock. I think the four of us on the panel today I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't block him off being on the show tonight so that he would have a go about Ferrari. But I think it is a shame. They should have picked one of them.
Yes.
And you never know if they'd have picked Charles first. I think if a win wasn't necessarily on, because I think all things considered, I think Mercedes is just a better car over the race pace in Australia. In Australia, we don't know about China or anything else yet. In Australia, I just think that Mercedes was just a little bit more calm and settled. Whenever Charles got past in the early doors, it didn't feel like George vanished into the distance behind him or fell apart. He was able to keep pace with them. To Coops' point, the cars are able to follow, which is fantastic. Even Max by the end, like he had been following we'll talk about it now in a sec, the whole race, and his tires are a little bit munched. He still had a really good race, was still able to follow Lando for a lot longer than he would have been able to 6 months ago. So I think that's good as well. Let's just hope that next time around Ferrari, I do think if a win was not, I think they threw away like at least another podium. Do you know, I think
100%.
Kimi Antonelli had no real right to get back up onto that podium. Top credit to him for doing it because he had a crap start. But realistically, if Ferrari had even picked one of them, Kimi had no right to get back up onto that podium.
I think there's an honourable mention as well for Lewis Hamilton. Because after the year last year, to come back the way he has, I think he's come on an awful lot since the end of last year, and the confidence is definitely creeping back in again. So I have to give an honourable mention to Lewis Hamilton here as well today.
Fair play. There's a lot of Ferrari fans who will be happy with you shouting that out. I wasn't going to do it, so fair play. But yes, fourth position, fourth place for him was good. But again, I think there was a double podium on for them today, or at least a second place finish. I think they could have beaten Kimi with one of the cars. The other kind of big moment within the race to chat about, at least it kind of was set up for a big moment and kind of pootered out a little bit, Coops, was Max Verstappen. And top credit to him after having an actual brake failure in qualifying and smashing into the wall at turn 1 in Q1, didn't set a lap. Unlike Oscar, this was actual complete car failure. It wasn't driver error. If you don't believe me, genuinely go back and watch Ant Davidson's breakdown of it. He goes into full slow motion and it's on Max's third downshift before he's even started turning the car. The brake locks and he spins. It was a complete brake failure, which is a huge shame because Isaac Hadjar showed there's a huge amount of pace in that car. Shout out to Isaac Hadjar. But Max's recovery drive, yes, a lot of people got out of his way by falling apart or not starting, Nico Hülkenberg, Oscar Piastri, but effectively last in qualifying to 6th on the grid was very, very good. Lando Norris did a really, really good job to hold him off at the end. That had the makings of a good fight, but it never really shook out. And I think this is a good example on the other side of it of showing that these batteries don't guarantee an overtake and don't make things easy, because Lando drove defensively fantastic with aged dying medium tires against Max's relatively newer hard tires. But the tire offset wasn't enough and the battery offset wasn't enough. That was a good example of how this isn't just a simple push to pass, because by rights, and last year it probably would have been the case, Max would have got him into a DRS corner.
Yes. And this is the thing that when we talk about variables, this is what I'm talking about in terms of we have a car that's a lot harder to drive. The drivers have to drive the cars now. As you say, the active aero activates for everybody. You've got your overtake buttons that you can press, but then if you press it at a certain point, you've got to work out when you're going to lose it, and the other person you've just passed will have it. So there's a lot more that the drivers have to think about. I just like the fact that the drivers have to drive the cars now, and they're not just like, well, we're stuck to the road, we'll be fine, we can fling it in wherever we want to. This is probably the weekend that shows that Red Bull have something, but it's not perfect, because when you went into qualifying, the first time that Max Verstappen tried to drive the car in anger, the derating or whatever it was to do with the rear end of that car locks out, spins about. Isaac Hadjar was the only mechanical failure and retiree of the race. There was other things beforehand with Nico, and then obviously the Aston Martins, but they're in their own situation. To be honest,
Did Bottas' engine not fired out as well?
Yeah, but that's a brand new team. Come on.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we're talking about Red Bull here, the Cadillacs were expecting them to do that. Aston Martin were expecting them to just shake the life out of both the drivers. So there is makings for a four-way fight. I've got a feeling that it's going to be between Mercedes and Ferrari for probably the championship battle, with your McLarens and the Red Bulls taking points off of the other two, which could help decide where it goes. So there'll be there or thereabouts. Verstappen can drive a shopping trolley and make it look good. So, I wouldn't have expected anything less.
And the good thing is as well, it looks like Isaac Hadjar can this year as well. And again, shout out to him, because Max failed. Isaac qualified third, which is what they've wanted from the second Red Bull driver forever. And he did it. It's not his fault. He didn't get to finish there. But I think you're right. They're there to steal points off each other.
They are, and Isaac Hadjar doing what he's supposed to do is the post Christian Horner Red Bull. This is a different Red Bull. This is a situation now where Red Bull are allowed to be what they are. The drivers are allowed to do what they want. They're being given their fair opportunities. There's none of this camp, that camp, this bit, that bit. Christian Horner said all the right things, but we always knew that he was keeping things for Verstappen and always kind of sabotaging the second seat for Verstappen's gain. One way or the other, whether it was on Verstappen's say-so or whether they just did it because they knew he was the one that was going to win them the championship anyway.
Probably wasn't the Verstappen you're thinking of, but it was a Verstappen.
Oh, yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Look how much parity came between the first and second cars when a certain Verstappen was kind of stood up to and told, got to wrap it, and give that a bye, and his allies were kicked out of the team. So this is a different Red Bull, and I think Red Bull fans and Verstappen fans as well should be excited by this. This isn't the whole weight of the team cannot be always on Max Verstappen. It just can't. And we've seen that. They should have won constructors more than they did. They should have put more towards the title fight last year. I mean, if Tsunoda was getting the same kind of backing as he should have done, it could have helped. Verstappen could have been winning his fifth just because, Tsunoda coming in there and stealing a win off of Oscar or off of Lando. But it just didn't happen. But I think this year, Isaac's definitely the person who will be there to back Verstappen up as it should have been done. Bottas for Hamilton, probably the biggest one in the recent season, recent times when it comes to Formula One. So yeah, I'm quite excited for how that team is going to work out if they can get these gremlins sorted with regards to the. God knows what happened to Isaac Hadjar's car, but it did sound like a bag of spanners by the time that if you saw the onboard and heard it, it was doing its thing, and then it was just sounding like very expensive bits of metal bouncing about the back of the car. You're like, ooh. Yeah, I don't want
that is a second worry for Red Bull though, isn't it? Because there was 3 moments in the weekend that shows that the car is fragile. All parts of the car are fragile. There was the brake failure for Max in qualifying. There was Lawson's entire inability to get off the line. Is that driver error? He just not quite is the starting procedure maybe just a little bit more complicated with that Red Bull powertrain? Don't know, but again, that's a moment for a Red Bull car that didn't go well. And then Isaac's bag of spanners throwing themselves into the road. It's a bit dramatic, but so, I think Red Bull are a bit fragile, but to your point, well made. The weight of the world can't be on Max's shoulders, and he was probably very outspoken about the fact that he's not happy with this generation of cars. To his credit, he called out on the radio at the end of the race, "I know you've all worked really hard. This is just a bit frustrating." Basically saying, you've given me the best you can here with the shit rules regulations, in his opinion. Fair play to him for that. But I think he'll drive a little bit more free this year, knowing that if he can't, Isaac will. And Isaac would have today, and it was through no fault of his own that he couldn't. So good job for Isaac. His Australian curse is a different matter entirely. Let's hope that next year that doesn't happen to him. Right, before we finish up, just a couple of other things to talk about, but we'll do it in this way. We're going to do best and worsts. So we're going to have best driver and best team, and then worst driver and worst team from each of you. And everybody listening in the on Twitch, let us know yours as well. Who is your best driver? Who's your best team? Who's your worst driver? Who's your worst team? I have a feeling there's probably going to be a bit of crossover on this because there's kind of only one option for worst team, isn't there? So, Coops, I'll start with you. We'll go best first. Who is your best driver and best team?
Best driver was Gabriel Bortoleto for me.
Very good shout. Very good shout. Points on debut for Audi. Really good race for him.
Yeah, and it's one of those races very much like George Russell last season. Quietly got on with it. No real dramas. And then you're like, oh, look
Did
at
nothing.
Bortoleto.
Eighth.
Did nothing. Points. There you go. And I mean, that Audi looks decent. I mean, a decent, solid
It does.
midfield runner. I think with the Hülkenberg, it was sensor issues to do with being able to talk to the car from the pit side of it, which I don't think was something that they really. You don't want to put that car out there without the pit wall being able to talk.
No, they were suggesting that it was like radio issues, but you're right. I think it was more actual computer issues. They couldn't see what was going on in the car, whether or not they could actually hear from Nico or not was irrelevant.
Yeah, and if you can't, with the complexity of these cars and the amount of sensors, you need to know what that car's doing. And if you can't, don't run. So
Your
yeah,
best team?
The best team. I'm going to go Ferrari, to be honest, because I have. I'm doing it more based not on last year, because last year we had so much excitement because they were coming up, they were doing a bit of a McLaren, they'd got their ship together the year before. You're like, right, this is it. It's going to be Ferrari, it's going to be Red Bull, it's going to be McLaren, Mercedes is going to be in there, and they were nowhere. And they couldn't figure
Someone
the car
told them
out.
to emulate McLaren, but didn't tell them what year of McLaren to emulate.
Exactly.
And they thought, you know what, 2013 was great.
They won a sprint, but the car was illegal, and and now they've came out and they quietly gone about their business. They've done a few things. They've done a Mercedes where you had an innovative thing and in testing, and everyone's going, "What the hell is that?" Certain people whipped out the Lego on podcasts and started talking about Lego and showing them things on Lego. I don't know who that was. That was a rumor I heard online. The car just has this innovative thing about it. They're doing some things with the exhaust fumes. They've got some weird things going on with the shark fin, and it's working. And I think they're going to be a lot closer to Mercedes than maybe this race shows. I think poor strategy or misunderstanding with the strategy. They should have split the strategy. It's fine. Look at Mercedes. McLaren have won the last couple of years. They weren't perfect when it came to certain things like that. The problem is we lay into Ferrari because they're good at making mistakes. They get that sorted, and then timings of VSCs and things, I think they're going to be on that. They're going to be on the gearbox of Mercedes pretty much the whole season.
I think that's fair, and we McLaren have won the last two constructors while very much getting VSCs wrong. Think of Silverstone. So it's not the be all and end all, and to have made those mistakes and still finished. Obviously Lando stopped twice and the rest only stopped once, so there was 26 seconds in gap there anyway, but there's a margin between where Mercedes and Ferrari were and where McLaren and Red Bull ended up, and I think it's probably fair to say that Oscar and Isaac would have been closer in and around Lando and Max than Lewis and Charles had they finished the race, had they taken part in the race. James, who is your best and worst?
Yes, a driver. I'm gonna give it to Arvid Lindblad because I think coming into this, only rookie on the grid, really, really solid weekends. Got into Q3, performed to get the points. It's all you can ask for. Beat his more experienced teammate. So I think it's just
Trashed his more experienced teammate.
Yeah. I think perfect start to his career. Looks like he belongs immediately. So I'm going to give it to him. And then I'm going to be boring to go with the best team, but I'll go Mercedes because it's hard to dispute a 1-2 finish. I think there is probably a little bit more in that car as well. I would presume they may have not sandbagged, but once Ferrari made that decision not to pit into the safety, giving them that 10 seconds and able to eke out the tyres to get to the one stop. I imagine that second half of the race they could maybe turn things down and manage the gap, and Ferrari didn't necessarily get close to them or even on those fresh tyres. So I'm going to give that to Mercedes because I think they are the class of the field at the moment. But I think a good shout out to Ferrari because they finally built something. They made the race more interesting. For example, if Ferrari weren't there, was it just the Mercedes driving away, and it wouldn't have been very interesting. So, but yeah, I had to give it to Mercedes.
Fair enough. Mairéad, your best.
I'm going to go with James. I'm going to go Arvid Lindblad as well. He kept Max Verstappen behind for a good bit of time as well. He was in fourth for a good bit of the race. It was really, really good. I don't know if you've seen his interviews as well on like Sky Sports F1 TV. He is so confident. He is ready to go at this thing. And yeah, he really did wonders. He's the only car that actually didn't have an issue within Red Bull this weekend. He absolutely nailed it. Yeah, he absolutely nailed it. So I am so impressed with him. I think there is a really bright future ahead for him after this weekend. Now, we will have to caveat that a little bit. I said last week that I actually think Arvid Lindblad will do okay because he never experienced the old cars. So he's going in from scratch. So I do think that did have something to do with it as well. If you had experienced the old cars, you're trying to change your way of driving. He's coming in, he doesn't know the old way of driving. He's coming from F2. So I do think that did play a part of it. However, you can't take away from what a great weekend he's had. Best team, I'm going to go a bit different. I'm going to go Audi, points on debut. I think Gabriel Bortoleto did fantastic altogether. So good.
Very strong suggestion. They'd have double points there had Nico been in the race. That car, as Coops said, looked very good. Really good.
So impressed. Beat Williams. I think they beat Haas as well, didn't they? Or was there were they between the two?
They beat a Haas.
Yeah, they were between the two, wasn't it? So I'm very impressed. First race, so fair play to him.
Very good. I am going to give my driver of the day to George Russell. Mostly to annoy Sock. He was pretty fearless. Yes, he got beaten off the line by the Ferrari, which is exactly what we were expecting. But in George Russell fashion, he didn't panic and kind of made some overtakes and then sort of did nothing. P1. Perfect race, perfect start, pole to P1. That was my prediction. So well done, George. I'm going to give my best team to Haas, actually, which I wasn't expecting to do, but they are clearly best of the rest. Particularly with Ollie Behrman, exactly as sort of predicted that this is the year he's going to step up big time and kind of walk over Esteban Ocon a little bit. Ocon was a little bit unfortunate to miss out on the point. I don't actually know what happened. At one point, he was right behind, like Behrman was 7th, Ocon was 8th, and then all of a sudden Ocon was 11th within like 3 corners. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was forced wide, made a mistake. I didn't see it. If you saw it, let me know what happened. I missed it completely. But they were both running in the points at one point. And it's exactly what we were sort of thinking. That actually, a lot of people said that Alpine were all of a sudden the best of the rest. They fucking weren't. They definitely weren't. But I think Haas did a great job and fair play to them, which is a good thing because that car is absolutely gorgeous and I want more of it in my eyeballs. Coops, your worsts. Worst driver, worst team. Or who had the worst weekend is probably the fairer way of putting it.
I had the worst weekend. I mean, I'm not Aston Martin probably, but I mean, like, I don't know. Who would you think? Without going down Aston Martin, probably I have to go with Williams, to be honest, because they had so much going on. They spent the whole of last year building this car up. They're 30 kilos overweight, which is about a second a lap in pace. As we know, we've talked about it already, about the trials and tribulations. The Carlos Sainz didn't even get to run in qualifying. And they were largely anonymous throughout the race. I mean, the Carlos Sainz was 15th. Alex Albon 12th. For a team who finished 5th last season, I'm just so disappointed. And they've got everything. Albon and Sainz are probably one of your top pairings if you look at the teams in their partnership.
And realistically, there's probably at least 3 positions there that they have inherited. Isaac Hadjar, Oscar Piastri, Nico Hülkenberg should all have by rights finished well ahead of them.
Yep. So they're not going to get much better for much of the start of the season while they try and get rid of this weight. So, and the fact that did they not stop development on the car last season like Australia?
Neatly, yeah.
Yeah, there's like 2 teams that went, nah, we're done. And then they still managed to screw it up. So yeah, I think...
And your worst driver?
My worst driver... I'm not going down, I'm not doing Aston Martin because it's not the driver's fault. The drivers,
Fernando Alonso had a great weekend, all things considered.
Yeah, you can't argue that point at all. I don't think there was anybody that stood out to me as being worse. I think they all done. Probably looking at the results, I would probably say Colapinto maybe, just in the finish result, 2 laps down and 14th, while driving an Alpine that has a Mercedes gearbox and power unit in it. That's a bit underwhelming. Probably should have done a bit better. And I think, did he not get a drive-through penalty or something? Or is it a Colapinto
and go?
A Colapinto and go. That was what he got, yeah.
Yes, again, lightning quick reactions for him to miss Liam Lawson at the start, but he did get a Colapinto and go, which was a graphic error for a stop and go penalty, which is harsh. Is it a
Start
formation
line
lap
procedure?
start line procedure? I think what happened is you're not allowed to exceed 50 kilometers an hour until you pass the start finish straight on the formation lap, and he overdid it. And it's one of those things, he might have only done it by like a kilometer or two, but it's like speeding in the pit lane. It's a slam dunk. Either you did it or you didn't do it. They look at the computer, it says if he did it or not, slam dunk penalty. It's a shame. If
it's like this pit lane speed limit, if he gunned it and he was like double, then you're getting a harsher penalty. If you point something like in the pit lane speed limit, you'll get penalty regardless. But see if you're 0.5 a kilometre over, you're getting like a 5-second number.
Well,
there are the caveats in it. So he's gunned that. He's fired it off the line and he's been at 100 kilometres an hour or whatever. And they went, oh, hold on.
Which is especially a shame because he's not a rookie. This is not his first year it's his first full season in Formula One. And it's his first time racing Formula One in Australia, but that's not an excuse. James, your worst driver, worst team for the Australian Grand Prix weekend?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Worst driver's gonna go. Well, worst weekend, Oscar Piastri, because I think it's hard to ignore that he wasn't able to race in his home race. And I'm also gonna go McLaren for worst team or worst weekend, just because expectations. Double world champions last year, they've been the best team. One car doesn't start, and Lando Norris are clearly unhappy with finishing 51 seconds back from the eventual winner. I just think, when you win those championships, you now have one aim, as everyone does, but you're happy with one result, and that's winning. And I think having this big gap to the leaders is going to be troublesome for them, especially like we said with the Mercedes engine in there at the back as well. There's obviously Mercedes done a better job with their car compared to McLaren. So yeah, not a good weekend for McLaren, and probably the worst weekend possible for Oscar Piastri. Not being able to start his home race is just not the way to start the season. So yeah, it's a McLaren double for me, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Mairéad, from your worst?
Pains me to say, I agree with James. It really does pain me to say, because we don't want it to be this way as a McLaren fan. However, if you're not in the race, you can't win the race. And he didn't start the race at his home Grand Prix. It's just something that can't be overlooked. So I think you have to put him down as the worst driver, as much as it pains me. You have to. I'm between McLaren and Williams, a little bit of Alpine as well. Obviously, Aston is completely out of the shop. We're not even including them in this at the moment. However, they did get back on track at one stage.
Both of them.
We'll give them, both of them came on back on track. So we'll give them a bit of a round of applause for that. Sad when that's a round of applause. But yeah, overall, I don't think there was any team that was absolutely desperate apart from Aston Martin or driver. I thought it'd be a lot worse. I really expected more safety cars. I really expected more breakdowns. So it's actually hard enough to pick worst, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. I'm going to
jump in quickly and say that I really should have picked Aston Martin, because see if they just kept Stroll in the garage, I would have got one of my predictions right and said there was 16 retirees. But then they decided to jump out to 17. I was rigid.
I was the exact opposite. I predicted that 17 would finish. So if they'd have kept him out, if he'd have finished the race, or at least been on track when the checkered flag came out, just send him out for the last lap and have him be classified. But he's officially not classified, actually, which was really annoying because it meant I didn't get my prediction. From my point of view, I know it's probably a bit harsh to double down on them as the new team, but I'm putting Cadillac down as the worst team. I think a lot of people said that out of qualifying, they would be, last quite comfortably. I'm sorry, out of testing, that they'd be last quite comfortably. I didn't quite expect them to be this bad. Fernando Alonso outgunned them completely in a car that doesn't work. And yes, he's Fernando Alonso, but it doesn't matter. That Honda engine doesn't work. So that's not good for Cadillac. And again, they're outshone by Audi. Yes, Audi are an existing team, basically, from Sauber, so they haven't had to build everything from new, but they built their own engine. So by rights, they should be the one going boom all the fucking time, and they're not. And fair play to Audi. As we said before, they have not come into Formula One to fill numbers. They've come to win eventually, and it's a very good start for them. Bad for Cadillac. Not a great look for Ferrari. The fuel system died of Valtteri Bottas's car, which is a shame. He did a good job to pull it off the road eventually, but that's a bit of a shame. And my worst driver is Sergio Perez. He finished last on the road. He was the last one officially qualified, and he looks like he's literally forgotten how to race. It was an awful race from him. He was ignoring blue flags. He literally went wheel banging with people. I think he literally drove into, I think it was Carlos Sainz at one point, literally like they were, and he turned his wheel into him. It was absolutely abhorrent. It was disgraceful. And he's like, oh, these cars are different to drive. It's like, yeah, no, don't buy that at all, mate. You were awful today. He finished last, he was 3 laps down. I thought the worst driver. Other people had, I think, worse weekends, all things considered, in terms of like expectation. Someone in the comments agrees with me. Typical Checo. Thank you. But yeah, not a good race from Checo at all, which is a huge shame. And even bigger shame for Valtteri Bottas that right off the bat he's starting and he's now behind Checo in the championship. And I predict that he's going to beat him pretty comfortably this year. Speaking of, before we finish up, let's take a look into our fantasy and our predictions. If you want to get involved with us this year, there's plenty of time to do so. We have our own fantasy league and our predictions league. They're over on f1.com. You can find the links to join them and the league codes down below. Get involved with us. Loads of engagement already on this, which is fantastic. Shout out already to Mads_F1, who is currently leading the predictions championship. She scored 111 points, which is a very, very impressive result. Well done. Her accuracy rating was 40%, which is really good. Mine was 40% too, but I didn't get as many high point scoring results, unfortunately. It's a fascinating way of doing it. 10 questions each weekend, and they chop and change, and we're going to have that going all year. So congratulations to Mads_F1 for leading after week 1. And then for our fantasy, loads of updates on this. Oh, where's my league gone? There it is. So who's leading after week 1? Checo Your Mirrors. Checo Your Mirrors is leading. Plastic team name. There was nobody in his mirrors, so there was nothing to Checo. 263 points for race 1. That is a very, very impressive turnaround. Well done, Checo Your Mirrors. Fair play. You are in the lead already. But shout out as well to Tire Shredder number 3 and Tire Shredder number 1. You got 2 of your teams in the top 4, so fair play there. And I won't mention where my teams are because that's really embarrassing. But there we go. Fair play to everybody for getting involved. Keep it up. China is obviously next week, so time a bit to get into your predictions for next week. We'll run that through as well in our preview for China during the week. And yes, thank you for getting involved, and do so more, which is fantastic. Final thoughts. Australia is back. Formula One is back. The new regulations are not perfect. I think it's fair to say there's some tweaks to be had, but can't deny the racing was good, and we had a battle for the lead for at least some of the race, which I thought was fantastic. Coops, final thoughts from you?
A good start, a good solid foundation, and it's only going to get better. So just imagine what these cars are going to be like when you ping in a bit of rain or a bit of something like that. It's going to be a bit juicy, so I'm looking forward to it.
Certainly will. Yeah, a bit of rain would actually be a bit spicy, won't it? James, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, same as Scoops. Good start. I'm looking forward to see how the different factors come in China. I think obviously the more potential overtaking spots, but more of a traditional overtaking circuit, proper actual purpose built. So yeah, bring it on. And luckily it's only a week away, so I'm already looking forward to it.
Indeed. Mairéad, your final thoughts?
Bring it on. What an exciting, I'm so excited to be back. I know it's been the shortest winter, but it's just so exciting to be back. I hope we have all the races. Unfortunately, it's not looking good for some races, and thinking of everyone there. But yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm absolutely sickened I'm not going to a race this year, because I just feel like the Sunday would be so good. I'm Silverstone usually, but yeah, not this year. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm tired, but I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So it's
Mairéad, just tell us how you really feel.
I'm buzzing.
Fair play, Mairéad, and thank you again, Annika, for your commitment this weekend, staying up for all the practice sessions and updating our socials and our website with all of the reports and the updates for that. Fair play to you for that one, and thank you very much. We have been Everything Trackside. I hope you enjoyed the Australian Grand Prix. It was a good one. There's no rest for the wicked. We're right back into China next week. We'll be back with our preview for the Chinese Grand Prix on Wednesday. We'll be streaming live on Twitch for that. Follow us on Everything Trackside on all socials. You'll find out what time we are going to go live at to get involved. And the episode will be up on Thursday. So that's it. You have a bit of time to sleep, Mairéad, and then we're going again. I've been Seán. Thank you very much for listening. Formula One is back. We've been Everything Trackside. We'll see you next week. Bye now.